The silver burned. Not the dull ache of a bruise or the sting of a slap. Seraphina knew those pains intimately. This was different. This was fire eating through her wrists where the chains bit into flesh, blistering her skin in slow, merciless waves. She hung in the darkness of the dungeon, arms stretched above her head, toes barely scraping the cold stone floor. 3 days. 3 days since they'd dragged her from her tiny servant's room. 3 days since her world had collapsed into this nightmare of iron bars and accusations. She was innocent. She knew it. The moon goddess knew it. But that had never mattered before. Why would it start now? The memory played behind her closed eyes like a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. She'd been scrubbing the great hall floors when the doors had burst open. Lady Ravenna had swept in like a dark storm, her crimson gown trailing behind her, her beautiful face twisted with theatrical horror. In her pale hands, she'd clutched a small leather pouch. Wolfsbane. Ravenna's voice had rung through the hall, sharp enough to shatter glass. Found hidden beneath the servant girl's mattress. She means to poison our king. The court had erupted. Nobles gasped. Warriors reached for their swords. And Seraphina had frozen there on her knees, the scrub brush still clutched in her raw, reddened hands. I didn't, she'd started. Silence. One of the guards had struck her across the face. The copper taste of blood had filled her mouth. Through the chaos, through the shouting and the accusations, Seraphina had looked for him. Kale. Her mate. The Alpha King who had rejected her on their mating night 5 years ago, who had taken Ravenna to his bed while Seraphina scrubbed his floors and washed his sheets and tried to survive on the scraps of a bond he refused to honor. He sat on his throne, jaw tight, eyes fixed on some point above her head. He never looked at her. Not once. Take her to the dungeons, he'd said, his voice flat. Empty. She will face the council's judgment. The guards had seized her arms, their grips bruising. As they'd hauled her toward the doors, Ravenna had glided close. To anyone watching, it looked like a lady surveying the fallen criminal. But Seraphina heard the whisper. Felt the hot breath against her ear. Did you really think I'd let you live long enough for your wolf to wake? Then she was gone, and Seraphina was being dragged into darkness. The verdict came on the second day. A council member, she didn't bother learning his name, read the sentence through the bars of her cell. Death by silver blade. Public execution in Central Square. Dawn of the following day. Do you have any final words to enter into the record? He'd asked, not even looking up from his scroll. Seraphina had laughed. It was a broken sound, rusty from disuse. Would it matter? He'd left without answering. Alone again, she'd let the truth settle over her like a shroud. Ravenna had chosen this method for a reason. The silver blade was quick. Final. It wouldn't give Seraphina's body time to heal, wouldn't allow for any miraculous intervention. Not that there would be one. She was wolfless. Everyone knew it. The mate bond with Kale had never fully formed because she had no wolf to complete it. She was broken. Defective. A mistake of fate that the moon goddess had apparently decided to correct. But something about Ravenna's words haunted her. Let you live long enough for your wolf to wake. What wolf? She had no wolf. The healers had confirmed it years ago. Her soul was empty where the beast should have been. Unless they'd been wrong. Unless someone had made sure they were wrong. The night stretched endless and cold. Seraphina drifted in and out of consciousness, her body weakened from days without food, her wrists screaming where the silver continued its slow torture. In those hazy moments between waking and sleeping, memories surfaced like bodies from deep water. Her mother's face. Her father's laugh. The small cottage where they'd lived before everything went wrong. She'd been 9 when they died. Murdered, she was told, for treason against the crown. She remembered the soldiers coming, remembered hiding in the root cellar while her mother screamed above. Remembered the silence that followed. They'd found her 3 days later, half-starved, clutching her mother's shawl. No one had ever told her what treason her parents had committed. No one had cared enough to explain why a 9-year-old girl had been made an orphan, shuffled into the servant quarters, and forgotten. She'd grown up invisible. A ghost haunting the edges of packed life, never belonging, never wanted. When the mating ceremony came and the bond had sparked between her and Cale, she'd foolishly thought her luck had changed. She could still see his face when he'd realized. The disgust. The disbelief. The curl of his lip as he'd looked her over, skinny, underfed, dressed in threadbare servant's clothes. "This cannot be right," he'd said, backing away from her like she carried plague. "I am the Alpha King. My mate cannot be this." He'd rejected her that same night. Not formally, that would have acknowledged the bond as real. Instead, he'd simply pretended it didn't exist. Took Ravenna as his mistress. Installed her in the queen's chambers. Left Serafina to continue her work as a servant, close enough to feel every moment of their intimacy through the broken bond, far enough to never matter. 5 years of that hell. 5 years of watching him with her. 5 years of scrubbing and serving and surviving. And now it would end with a blade at dawn. In the darkness of her cell, something stirred. Deep in her chest, in a place she'd thought empty, she felt a flutter. A whisper. A presence that had been trying to break free for years, battering against walls she hadn't known existed. "Help me," she thought desperately. "Please. If you're real. If you're there. Help me." Silence answered. The flutter faded. She was alone. She'd always been alone. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Serafina lifted her head, expecting guards come to drag her to her death. Instead, a single figure emerged from the shadows. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Familiar. Beta Commander Draven. The king's second. One of the few people in the palace who had ever shown her a shred of kindness, a nod in the hallway, an extra portion of bread left where she'd find it. He carried a tray. Her last meal, she assumed. "Leave us," he told the dungeon guard. His voice carried the weight of command. The guard hesitated. "Sir, the prisoner." "I said leave." The guard left. Draven waited until the footsteps faded before moving closer. Through the bars, his eyes, dark brown, almost black, found hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I don't have much time." He set down the tray and reached through the bars. In his palm sat a small glass vial filled with amber liquid. "Drink this." "What is it?" "Something that will counteract some of the poison in your system." "Poison." Her blood ran cold. "I don't understand." "You've been poisoned since before you were born, little star." His voice cracked on the endearment. "They made sure you'd never wake. Never know what you really are. Little star." Her mother had called her that. How did he? "This won't save you," Draven continued, pressing the vial into her trembling hands. "It's not enough to undo 24 years of damage in one night. But it might wake her. And if she wakes..." His jaw tightened. "Fight. When they come for you at dawn, fight until you can't anymore. Promise me." "Who is she? What are you talking about?" But he was already retreating, already disappearing into the shadows. "Fight, little star," he called back. "Fight until you can't." Then he was gone. Serafina stared at the vial. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped it. This could be more poison. A final cruelty. A way to kill her before the public spectacle and rob Ravenna of her triumph. But Draven's eyes had been desperate. Honest. And he'd called her Little Star, a name no one living should know. She uncorked the vial. The amber liquid smelled like honey and summer rain. She drank. The effect was immediate. Fire raced through her veins, not the silver's burn but something else. Something alive. The world tilted sideways, and suddenly she wasn't in the dungeon anymore. She was remembering. But the memories weren't hers. A woman lay on a stone altar, heavily pregnant, struggling against the hands that held her down. Her face, Seraphina knew that face. Had seen it in her dreams. Her mother. Another woman stood over her, dark-haired and beautiful, holding a goblet of black liquid. Please, her mother begged. Please, don't do this to my child. The golden wolf will never wake. The dark-haired woman's voice was cold. Ancient. Wrong. The child will be born empty. A shell. Exactly as we need her. She forced the liquid down the pregnant woman's throat. Black tears streamed from her mother's eyes. The dark-haired woman turned, and Seraphina saw her face clearly. Ravenna. But younger. Different. And somehow exactly the same. The vision shattered. Seraphina came back to herself with a gasp, the vial slipping from her fingers and shattering on the stone floor. Her mind reeled. Ravenna had been there. At her mother's poisoning. 24 years ago. But Ravenna was only 26. 2 years older than Seraphina herself. She would have been a toddler when. Unless she wasn't human at all. Unless she had never been human. The golden wolf will never wake. Something inside Seraphina stirred again. Stronger now. Angrier. A presence unfurling in the dark places of her soul, testing the bars of a cage it had been locked inside for 2 decades. Who are you? Seraphina thought. No answer came. But she felt it there. Waiting. Watching. Wanting. Dawn arrived in shades of gray and gold. The guards came with rough hands and rougher words. They unlocked her chains, let her crumple to the floor, then hauled her up by her arms. Her legs wouldn't hold her. It didn't matter. They dragged her anyway. Through the palace corridors. Past servants who looked away. Past nobles who spat at her feet. Out into the cold morning air where the central square waited, packed with hundreds of wolves who had come to watch her die. The execution platform rose at the square's center, wooden steps leading up to a block stained dark with old blood. Above it all, on an elevated throne draped in crimson, sat Kale. Ravenna perched beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm. Her smile was small. Satisfied. The smile of a woman who had already won. Seraphina's eyes met Kale's for the first time in months. Nothing. His face was carved from stone. Cold. Empty. As if the woman being dragged to her death was a stranger rather than the mate fate had chosen for him. The guards forced her up the steps. Pushed her to her knees. The executioner stood waiting, a silver blade gleaming in his hands. The crowd roared for blood. Seraphina stared at the stained block before her. In moments, her head would rest there. In moments, the blade would fall. In moments, everything would end. Fight, Draven had said. Fight until you can't. But how could she fight this? She had no wolf. No power. No. Deep inside her, something shattered. Not her spirit. Not her hope. Something else. A barrier. A cage built of poison and dark magic and 24 years of imprisonment. Golden light exploded behind her eyes. And in her mind, for the first time in her life, another voice spoke. Ancient. Female. Furious beyond measure. They will kneel, little one. The executioner raised his blade. Every single one of them will kneel. The blade began its descent. And Seraphina's eyes snapped open. Burning gold. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 2. The blade shattered. One moment, silver death descended towards Seraphina's neck. The next, the weapon exploded into 1,000 glittering fragments, scattering across the execution platform like broken stars. Golden light erupted from her body. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was a detonation, pure, raw power that burst outward in a blinding wave. The executioner flew backward, crashing through the wooden railing and into the screaming crowd. Guards within 20 feet were thrown like ragdolls, their armor clanging against cobblestones. Noble ladies shrieked. Warriors stumbled. And Seraphina rose. The chains that had bound her wrists didn't break, they melted. Silver ran down her arms like water, dripping onto the platform and sizzling where it fell. The burns on her skin healed in seconds, fresh pink flesh replacing the angry blisters. She looked down at her hands. Golden light pulsed beneath her skin, racing along her veins in intricate patterns. Not random. Deliberate. Ancient runes she somehow recognized without ever having seen them before. Yes, the voice inside her purred. Remember who you are. Her hair lifted in an invisible wind. Strand by strand, the dark brown color bled away, replaced by white gold that gleamed like moonlight made solid. The change rippled from roots to tips until not a trace of her former color remained. Power radiated from her in waves. She could feel it spreading across the square, pressing against every wolf present with a weight they couldn't ignore. A command older than language. An authority written into the bones of their kind. Submit. One by one, they obeyed. A warrior in the front row dropped to his knees, head bowed, neck bared. Then another. And another. The submission spread like wildfire through the crowd, guards, nobles, servants, elders. They couldn't stop themselves. Their wolves recognized something their human minds couldn't comprehend and responded with ancient instinct. Someone screamed, "The Golden Luna." The cry was taken up, echoing across the square in waves of terror and awe. The prophecy. The Golden Luna has returned. Seraphina stood at the center of the chaos, golden eyes burning, power singing through her veins. Inside her mind, her wolf, Aurora, the name surfaced like a memory, stretched and settled into her rightful place. They will kneel, Aurora had promised. And they did. Every single one of them. Kale. Pain. Kale had known pain before. Battle wounds. Broken bones. The crushing weight of a crown he'd never wanted. But this was something else entirely. His chest was being ripped open from the inside. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything but clutch at his heart as the mate bond he'd spent 5 years ignoring roared to life with devastating force. Her. The word crashed through him like a tidal wave. The bond wasn't weak. It had never been weak. It was a living thing, vast and powerful, and it had been screaming at him for 5 years while something dark and poisonous muffled its voice. Now that poison was burning away, and everything it had hidden came flooding back. He felt her. Really felt her for the first time. 5 years of loneliness so profound it echoed in his bones. 5 years of hunger, of exhaustion, of scrubbing floors until her hands cracked and bled. 5 years of watching him with another woman, feeling every kiss, every touch through a bond that wouldn't fully break no matter how hard he tried to sever it. The execution order. His signature on the parchment. Her face when the guards dragged her away. What have I done? Kale fell to his knees. Not because of her power, though that crashed over him too, demanding submission from his wolf. He fell because the weight of his cruelty was suddenly, horrifyingly clear. Every cold word. Every dismissive glance. Every night he'd spent in Ravenna's arms while his true mate lay alone in servants' quarters, feeling everything. He had done this. He had chosen this. Poison or not, he had looked at his mate and seen nothing worth keeping. On the platform, Seraphina turned. Their eyes met across the chaos, her gold, his gray, the bonds singing between them with 5 years of suppressed intensity. He saw the moment she recognized what was happening to him. Saw the flash of something that might have been satisfaction. He deserved that. He deserved worse. Seraphina, his voice broke. She looked away. Seraphina. She didn't want to see his pain. Didn't want to feel the bond surging between them, trying to pull her toward him even now. After everything. After 5 years of hell and a death sentence and a blade aimed at her neck. The bond didn't care about justice. It only knew its other half was hurting. Focus, Aurora commanded. The witch. Seraphina's gaze snapped to the elevated throne where Ravenna sat frozen, her beautiful face pale with shock. For one moment, their eyes locked. Then Ravenna moved. She lunged from the throne with inhuman speed, her hands slashing through the air. Shadows coalesced around her fingers, forming into a blade of pure darkness, black as void, cold as death. The crowd screamed. Guards who had regained their feet scrambled backward. Ravenna's blade arced towards Seraphina's heart. Seraphina caught it. Her golden hand closed around the dark blade mid-swing, stopping it cold. The weapon shuddered in her grip, shadows writhing against her palm. It should have sliced through flesh. Should have poisoned her blood. Should have done 100 dark things. Instead, it crumbled. Seraphina crushed the blade like brittle glass, dark fragments dissolving into nothing between her fingers. Ravenna stumbled backward, genuine fear flickering across her features for the first time. "I remember you now," Seraphina said. Her voice resonated with power, carrying across the silent square. "I saw what you did to my mother." Ravenna's composure cracked further. "You don't know what you're. You poisoned her while she carried me. Made sure I would be born empty." Seraphina advanced one step. The crowd parted before her like waves before a ship. "You killed my father when he tried to protect us. You've been killing me slowly for 24 years. Lies. Delusions of a desperate. Show them." Seraphina reached out with her new power, golden light wrapping around Ravenna's form. She pulled. The glamour shattered. Ravenna's beautiful face rippled, wavered, and fell away like a discarded mask. What remained beneath made the crowd gasp in horror. The woman standing before them was ancient. Her skin was pale as bone, stretched thin over sharp features. Dark veins spider-webbed across her cheeks and down her throat, pulsing with shadow. Her eyes, those lovely dark eyes that had seduced a king, were pure black. No whites. No iris. Just endless, hungry darkness. She was centuries old. Perhaps older. "What are you?" someone in the crowd whispered. Ravenna, whatever her true name was, hissed like a serpent. Her form flickered, shadows gathering around her. "This isn't over, little wolf." Her voice had changed too, layered with echoes of something vast and terrible. "The ritual has already begun. You can't stop what's coming." She raised her hand. The air behind her tore open, revealing a portal of swirling darkness. Seraphina could have stopped her. Could have reached out with this new power and dragged the witch back to face justice. But Aurora whispered caution. "Let her run. We need to understand what ritual she speaks of. What her true goal is. Dead enemies tell no tales." Seraphina let her go. Ravenna stepped backward into the portal, her black eyes burning with promise. "We will finish this, Golden Luna. On the blood moon, we will finish this." The darkness swallowed her. The portal collapsed. She was gone. Silence hung over the square. Thousands of wolves remained on their knees, staring at Seraphina with expressions ranging from awe to terror. The council members had emerged from wherever they'd fled, watching with calculating eyes. Guards hovered uncertainly, unsure whether to protect her or attack her. And Kale. Still kneeling. Still clutching his chest. His gray eyes fixed on her with desperate intensity. Seraphina climbed down from the execution platform. Her bare feet touched cold cobblestones, but she felt no chill. The power within her burned too bright for mundane discomforts. She walked to the center of the square and stopped. "I, Seraphina Ashford," she said, her voice ringing clear as a bell, "reject the false accusations against me." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I reject this court, which sentenced me to death without evidence or trial. The council members shifted uncomfortably. I reject this kingdom, which allowed me to suffer for 5 years while its king looked the other way. She turned, finally, to face Kale directly. He flinched as if she'd struck him. And I reject you, Alpha King. The bond between them screamed in protest. She felt it fighting her words, trying to close the distance she was creating. But Seraphina was done being controlled by fate. Done being tied to a man who had thrown her away. You are nothing to me, she said coldly. From this moment forward, we are nothing to each other. She turned away. And that's when Aurora spoke again. Wait. Look at his chest. Seraphina paused. Focused. Let her new sight sharpen and deepen until she saw beyond the physical. Dark tendrils wrapped around Kale's heart. The same shadow magic Ravenna had used against Seraphina. It coiled through his chest like a parasitic vine, digging deep into the muscle of his heart. Poisoning his thoughts. Clouding his judgment. Suppressing the bond that would have told him the truth years ago. He'd been poisoned too. Not to suppress a wolf, he had no wolf to suppress. To suppress the bond. To make him hate his mate. To ensure he would reject her, abuse her, eventually kill her. Ravenna's puppet. Just like Seraphina had been her victim. It didn't excuse 5 years of cruelty. Didn't erase the cold words, the dismissive looks, the night Seraphina had sobbed alone in her tiny room while he laughed with another woman. Poison might have clouded his mind, but he'd still made choices. Still signed her death warrant. Still watched her dragged to execution without a flicker of protest. But. The bond howled inside her, desperate and anguished. Kale was still its other half. Still the mate the moon goddess had chosen. And now that she'd rejected him, forcefully, publicly, completely, the dark magic around his heart was tightening. Feeding on the broken bond. Killing him slowly. He will die, Aurora said quietly. The poison won't let the rejection take cleanly. It will destroy his heart before the bond can sever. Seraphina could save him. She could feel it, the power within her that could burn away Ravenna's magic, heal the damage, free him from the puppet strings. She could save the man who had condemned her to death. The question was whether she wanted to. Seraphina walked. Through the stunned crowd, past the bowing wolves, toward the palace gates. Her white gold hair streamed behind her. Her golden eyes burned straight ahead. She didn't look back. Behind her, she heard Kale collapse completely. Heard gasps of alarm. Heard someone call for healers. Beta Draven appeared at her side, falling into step beside her. You have maybe 2 hours, he said quietly. The poison won't let the bond break cleanly. It's feeding on the rejection, crushing his heart. Good. The word came out cold. Certain. Final. But. Golden tears slipped down her cheeks. She couldn't stop them. Didn't even feel them until Draven's sharp intake of breath made her reach up to touch her own face. Her fingers came away wet and shimmering. The bond didn't care about justice. It didn't care about 5 years of suffering or death warrants or rejection. It only knew that its other half was dying, and it was tearing her apart from the inside. Aurora howled in her mind, not in anger, but in anguish. The wolf wanted her mate. Wanted him despite everything. Wanted to turn around and run back to him, to burn away the poison and claim what was hers. Seraphina kept walking. He deserves to die, she told herself. Perhaps, Aurora whispered back. But do we deserve to feel it happen? She didn't have an answer. The palace gates loomed ahead. Beyond them lay freedom. Beyond them lay a world where she didn't have to be the rejected Omega, the condemned prisoner, the forgotten mate. But behind her, a man was dying. A man whose cruelty might not have been entirely his own. A man the moon goddess herself had chosen for her, for reasons Seraphina couldn't understand. 2 hours. That's how long she had to decide. Save him, and remain bound to the monster who had nearly killed her. Let him die, and feel every moment of his end through a bond that wouldn't release its grip. Either way, she would suffer. Golden tears fell faster, leaving trails of light down her cheeks. The bond didn't care about betrayal. It only knew its other half was dying. And despite everything, despite 5 years of hell, despite the execution block, despite the blade that had nearly taken her head, some part of Serafina was dying too. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. Freedom stood 10 steps away. Serafina could see the border marker, a towering stone carved with the Silvercrest crest, the edge of Kale's territory. Beyond it lay unclaimed lands, neutral forests where no alpha held sway. Beyond it lay escape. She couldn't take another step. Through the bond she tried to sever, she felt Kale's heartbeat. It stuttered and slowed, each beat weaker than the last. The dark magic was crushing his heart like a fist closing around an overripe fruit. Aurora thrashed inside her mind, clawing at Serafina's consciousness with desperate urgency. Turn back. No. You have to turn back. He condemned me to death. If he dies with the poison still in him, Aurora's voice cracked, ragged with pain. The dark magic doesn't just disappear. It transfers. To the next alpha bloodline. Serafina stopped breathing. His younger brother, Aurora continued. His 6-year-old nephew. The boy you've seen playing in the gardens. The one who always waves at you when no one else is looking. Marcus. Little Marcus, with his gap-toothed smile and his wooden sword. The only member of the royal family who had ever treated Serafina like a person instead of furniture. No. The word came out strangled. If Kale dies, the poison takes root in Marcus. By his 7th birthday, he'll start forgetting kindness. By his 10th, he'll be as cruel as his uncle. By his 20th. Stop. Serafina's hands curled into fists. Just stop. Draven stood beside her, silent. Waiting. She turned to face him. Did you know? About the magic transferring? I suspected. His dark eyes held steady. That's why I gave you the vial. Why I told you to fight. I was hoping, praying, that your wolf would wake in time. That you'd be able to purge the poison from him before she had to make this choice. Save the man who had destroyed her, or doom a child to become the next monster. It wasn't really a choice at all. Serafina turned back. Draven fell into step beside her as she marched toward the palace, her white gold hair streaming behind her like a battle flag. The crowd that had gathered at the execution still lingered in clusters, watching her with wide eyes. There's something else you should know, Draven said quietly. Before we go further. More secrets? One more. The biggest one. He took a breath. Your father had another child. A son from his first mating, before he met your mother. That child was hidden away to protect him from the same fate that found your parents. Serafina's stride faltered. What are you saying? Draven stopped walking. When she turned to face him, she saw something in his expression she'd never noticed before. The shape of his jaw. The curve of his brow. Features that mirrored her own in subtle ways she'd been too beaten down to ever observe. I'm your brother, Serafina. Half-brother. Same father, different mothers. His voice thickened. I've been protecting you since the day they brought you to the palace. Every extra portion of food you found. Every time a guard mysteriously changed shifts before he could corner you. Every accident that befell the nobles who tried to hurt you. The world tilted sideways. Why didn't you tell me? Because knowing would have put you in more danger. Ravenna was always watching. If she'd known I was connected to you, to our parents' legacy, he shook his head. I couldn't risk it. Not until you could protect yourself. Our parents. Serafina's throat tightened. You knew them. I was 7 when they died. Old enough to remember. Old enough to understand why. His hands clenched at his sides. They weren't traitors, Serafina. They were murdered because they discovered what Ravenna was planning. Which was what? You. The word hung between them like a blade. They found out about the golden wolf. About the prophecy. About Ravenna's ritual to resurrect her goddess using your power. Draven's jaw tightened. Mother was pregnant with you when they poisoned her womb. They didn't want to kill the golden wolf, they wanted to trap it inside you. Keep it dormant until the right moment. Until you were old enough, desperate enough, broken enough to serve their purpose. 24 years. Her entire life had been shaped by that poisoning. Every moment of loneliness, every year without her wolf, every cruel rejection from the mate who should have treasured her. All of it orchestrated. All of it planned. I'm going to kill her. Serafina's voice came out calm. Almost peaceful. Slowly. Get in line. Draven managed a grim smile. But first, we save the king. Then we figure out how to stop whatever ritual she's planning. Serafina nodded and resumed walking. She had a choice to make. Vengeance or mercy. Hatred or healing. But that choice had nothing to do with Kale. It was about a 6-year-old boy who didn't deserve to become a monster. The council tried to stop her at the door to Kale's chambers. She's still a convicted criminal. Lord Harwick sputtered, his jowls quivering with outrage. She cannot be allowed near the king. Serafina's eyes flashed gold. Every council member dropped to their knees, necks bared, wolves whimpering in submission. Lord Harwick made a sound like a strangled cat. Move, Serafina said. They moved. She pushed open the heavy doors and stepped into the royal bedchamber. The room was enormous, larger than the entire servants' quarters where she'd spent 5 years. Rich tapestries covered the walls. A fire roared in a marble fireplace. And on the massive bed, Kale lay dying. His skin had gone gray. Sweat soaked through the fine linens. His chest rose and fell in shallow, irregular gasps. The dark veins Serafina had glimpsed earlier had spread, visible now even to normal eyes, crawling up his throat and down his arms like black lightning. Ravenna's poison, feeding on the broken bond. Eating him alive. Serafina approached the bed. She felt nothing, or told herself she felt nothing. This wasn't about him. This was about Marcus. About stopping the spread of darkness. Lyra, Aurora whispered. She ignored her wolf. Everyone out, she commanded. The healers and servants who had been hovering fled without protest. Only Draven remained, standing guard at the door. Serafina sat on the edge of the bed. Up close, Kale looked worse. The strong features she'd once found so handsome were sunken, ravaged by the poison spread. His eyes were closed, his breathing labored. She placed her hands on his chest. The darkness recoiled from her touch, hissing like a living thing. She could feel it fighting her, digging deeper into his heart, trying to burrow beyond her reach. This will hurt, Aurora warned. For both of you. To purge the poison, you'll have to follow its roots. See everywhere it spread. Every moment it influenced. I know. You'll relive it all. Every cruelty. Every rejection. Every night you cried yourself to sleep while he. I said I know. Serafina closed her eyes and called on her power. Golden light flowed from her palms, sinking into Kale's chest, chasing the darkness through his veins. The poison screamed, an actual sound, high and terrible, as her power burned it away. And then the memories came. She felt his disgust on their mating night. Saw herself through his eyes, skinny, dirty, worthless. Felt his shame at being bound to such a creature. She watched herself scrubbing floors while he laughed with Ravenna. Felt his contempt each time he passed her in the halls. She experienced the cold satisfaction he'd felt signing her death warrant. The relief. finally rid of the embarrassment. Finally free. But underneath it all, she felt something else. A voice screaming in the darkness. His true self, trapped behind walls of shadow, pounding against the poison's grip, trying desperately to break free. He had fought. Not hard enough, not well enough, but he had fought. Some part of him had known something was wrong. Had felt the bond trying to tell him the truth. Had questioned why he felt nothing but hatred for the woman fate had chosen. The poison had crushed that voice every time. Twisted his thoughts. Turned doubt into certainty, questions into contempt. He hadn't been innocent. But he hadn't been entirely guilty either. Serafina ripped her hands away, gasping. Cale's eyes flew open. Gray. Clear. Filled with horror. No. The word tore from his throat. No, no, no. He lurched upright, grabbing for her. Serafina jerked backward, nearly falling off the bed. Don't touch me. Serafina, his voice cracked. I remember. Moon goddess help me, I remember everything. What I said to you. What I did. The execution, I signed it, I watched them drag you away and I felt nothing. You felt what she wanted you to feel. That's not, I can't, he was shaking. Tears streamed down his face. How do I apologize for 5 years? How do I ever? You don't. The words came out flat. Final. Serafina rose from the bed, putting distance between them. I didn't save you because you deserve saving. I saved you because if you died, your poison would have transferred to Marcus. She watched understanding dawn on his face, fresh horror layering over the old. I refuse to let that child become another monster because of Ravenna's magic. Marcus. Cale's voice was hollow. I would have, he would have. Yes. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. Serafina watched without sympathy. The memories she'd experienced had shown her the truth. He hadn't been entirely in control. But they'd also shown her something else. The contempt had come too easily. The cruelty had fit too naturally. The poison had amplified what was already there. A seed of darkness that had needed only the slightest encouragement to grow. Understand this, she said coldly. I will never be your Luna. I will never share your bed. I will never forgive you. The bond between us is functional again, but I will not honor it. I will not accept it. When this is over, when Ravenna is destroyed, I will find a way to sever it completely. Cale lowered his hands. His face was ravaged, but his eyes met hers steadily. I know. She'd expected arguments. Please. Alpha dominance and commands. I don't deserve forgiveness, he continued, his voice raw. I don't deserve you. I never did, even before the poison. But I swear to you, Serafina, I will spend whatever life I have left destroying the woman who used me to hurt you. Whatever it costs. Whatever it takes. It wasn't enough. Could never be enough. But it was something. Her parents' quarters had been sealed for 15 years. Serafina stood before the door, her hand pressed against ancient wood. The lock was silver, designed to keep out wolves. But she wasn't just a wolf anymore. Golden light flowed from her palm. The lock melted. The door swung open. Dust motes danced in the light from the hallway. The room beyond was exactly as it had been left. A bed with faded quilts. A wardrobe with doors hanging open. A desk covered in papers that time had yellowed. Serafina stepped inside. Behind her, Draven waited in the doorway. I used to come here, he said quietly. When I was younger. Just to feel close to them. She moved through the room slowly, trailing her fingers over furniture her mother had touched. Her father had sat at this desk. Her mother had slept in this bed. They had lived here, loved here, died trying to protect her. The desk drawer was locked. Another pulse of power, and it opened. Inside lay a leather journal, bound with string. Seraphina's hands trembled as she lifted it. The entries spanned months. Her mother's handwriting, elegant, precise, filled page after page. Most were mundane, daily observations, plans for the nursery, excitement about the coming baby. Then the tone changed. I've discovered something terrible. Ravenna, if that's even her name, is not what she claims. She's old. Centuries old. Part of something called the Dark Coven. They're planning something called the Resurrection Ritual. They need the Golden Luna's blood. They need it spilled willingly. At a place of ultimate betrayal. On the night of the blood moon. If they succeed, they'll resurrect Nyx. The Dark Goddess. The mother of all shadows. Seraphina's blood ran cold. She kept reading. I've learned why they chose our family. The golden wolf can only be born to a female descended from Nyx herself. The words blurred. She blinked, forced herself to focus. My grandmother was Nyx's last vessel before she was destroyed 1,000 years ago. We carry the goddess's bloodline. We've carried it for generations, hidden, forgotten. If they resurrect Nyx using Seraphina's blood. The final entry. Her mother's handwriting had grown shaky, desperate. Nyx won't just return. She'll return inside Seraphina's body. Our daughter won't be killed. She'll be erased. Replaced by an ancient evil wearing her face. I have to stop this. I have to protect her. I have to. The entry ended mid-sentence. Stained with something dark. Blood, perhaps. Or tears. Seraphina closed the journal. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. They don't want to kill me, she realized. They want to hollow me out. Make me a vessel for their goddess. Erase everything I am and use my body as a puppet. Aurora growled deep in her mind. We won't let them. 5 days. The blood moon is in 5 days. Before she could process, before she could plan, the door burst open. A messenger stumbled in, face white with terror. My lady, he gasped for breath. The Silvermoon Pack, 300 wolves, Ravenna has taken them all hostage. The world narrowed to a single point. She sent a message. The messenger's voice shook. Come alone to the ruins of Nyx on the blood moon, or she'll kill one hostage every hour. Starting now. Who? Seraphina's voice came out steady, though her heart screamed. Who is the first? The messenger swallowed hard. A child. A little boy. She said you used to read him stories. Tommy. 6 years old. Brown eyes. Loved tales about brave knights and magical wolves. The book of stories was still under her old mattress in the servants' quarters. She'd been saving it to give him for his birthday. 5 days. 300 hostages. One impossible choice. She could go. Walk willingly to her own erasure. Save the hostages. Become a vessel for an ancient evil. Or she could fight. Find another way. Risk Tommy's life and hundreds of others while she searched for a solution that might not exist. The journal weighed heavy in her hands. Her mother had died trying to protect her from this moment. Now Seraphina had 5 days to succeed where her mother had failed. 5 days to find a way to destroy Ravenna, save the hostages, and somehow prevent an ancient goddess from wearing her skin. The bond pulsed in her chest. Somewhere in the palace, Kale felt her fear. She didn't want his help. Didn't want his presence. Didn't want anything from the man who had nearly killed her. But wanting had nothing to do with survival. And Seraphina intended to survive. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 4. I'm going to need your army. Seraphina stood in the war room, her golden eyes fixed on Kale. The massive oak table between them was covered with maps, but neither of them looked at the terrain. They were looking at each other. Not because I'm your mate, she continued, her voice flat. Not because I forgive you. Because 300 innocent wolves will die if I don't stop Ravenna, and I can't do it alone. Kale didn't hesitate. You'll have more than my army. I need soldiers, not empty promises. And I'm not offering promises. He stepped around the table, stopping just far enough away to respect the distance she demanded. You'll have every alpha in the 5 kingdoms. I'll make them kneel to you if I have to. Something flickered across his face, determination, desperation, the shadow of guilt that hadn't left his eyes since she'd purged the poison. Serafina didn't care what drove him. She only cared about results. Call them, she said. Now. The 5 Alpha Kings arrived within 48 hours. Emergency summons from the Silvercrest throne commanded instant response. Pack law demanded it. And Kale's reputation, ruthless, powerful, not a man to be ignored, ensured compliance. They gathered in the Great Hall, 4 visiting alphas and their retinues filling the space with testosterone and barely contained aggression. Alpha Ronan of the Northern Reaches, ancient and scarred. Alpha Marcus of the Western Shore, young and hungry. Alpha Theron of the Eastern Kingdom, sleek and calculating. Alpha Darius of the Southern Territories, massive and silent. They expected to find Kale on the throne. Expected to discuss whatever crisis had warranted such urgency. They found Serafina instead. She sat in the silver throne, white gold hair cascading over her shoulders, golden markings visible on the exposed skin of her arms. Her eyes burned with quiet power. Beside her, Kale stood like a guard. A servant. A man who had surrendered his position to someone infinitely more powerful. Alpha Ronan was the first to react. What is this? His voice boomed through the hall. Some kind of jest? Where is the king? Standing where he belongs, Serafina answered. Beside his Luna. Luna? Theron's laugh was sharp. Dismissive. The wolfless serving girl? The would-be assassin? He turned to Kale with contempt. Have you lost your mind entirely? The other alphas murmured agreement. Their wolves pressed against Serafina's consciousness, testing her, dismissing her. For ancient predators who had ruled their territories for decades, who had never bowed to anyone. Serafina released her power. Not all of it. Not even half. Just a fraction, a whisper of what burned inside her. Golden light rippled outward from the throne. The air itself seemed to thicken, pressing down with irresistible weight. One by one, the alphas fell to their knees. Their wolves whimpered, their human minds scrambling to understand what was happening. Aurora rose inside Serafina, her ancient voice layering over Serafina's own. The Golden Luna commands you. The words resonated with power older than pack law. Older than the kingdoms themselves. You will listen, or you will submit. There is no third option. Silence crashed through the hall. The visiting alphas stared up at her from their knees, eyes wide, wolves cowering. Even their retinues had dropped, unable to resist the command that thrummed through every fiber of their being. Serafina let the power recede. Slowly. Deliberately. Now, she said in her normal voice, we discuss how to save 300 innocent wolves from the witch who has been manipulating your kingdoms for centuries. No one argued. Kale. While Serafina commanded kings, Kale descended into hell. The dungeon was exactly as he remembered, cold stone, iron bars, the lingering scent of fear and suffering. But he hadn't truly seen it before. Hadn't let himself look closely at the place where he'd sent his mate to await execution. Now he looked. Bloodstains marked the walls of her cell. Not fresh, but not old either. Dark smears at different heights, as if someone had been held against the stone at various angles. The silver chains still hung from the ceiling, their surfaces discolored from prolonged contact with skin. Her skin. Kale's wolf howled inside him, clawing at his consciousness with anguished rage. A guard shuffled past, keys jangling. Young. Nervous. clearly uncomfortable being in the dungeon with the king. The prisoner who was held here, Kale said, his voice carefully controlled. Did she have visitors? The guard hesitated. Just Lady Ravenna, Your Majesty. She came every night. Said she was checking on the prisoner's condition. Every night. Ravenna had come here every night while Serafina awaited death. What did she do during these visits? Another hesitation. Longer this time. The guard's eyes darted toward a door at the end of the corridor. I wasn't permitted to stay during the visits, Majesty. But I heard sounds. Lady Ravenna said they were necessary for the prisoner's confession. Kale walked past the guard. His footsteps echoed against stone. The door at the end was locked, but locks meant nothing to an alpha king. He broke it open with one strike. The room beyond was small. Windowless. Lit by torches that guttered in ancient brackets. And against every wall, arranged with loving care, hung instruments of torture. Blades designed to cut without killing. Needles meant for precision pain. Brands that still smelled faintly of burned flesh. A chair with silver restraints, positioned beneath a complex system of chains and pulleys. Kale stood in the doorway and stared. Every night. For 3 days. While he slept peacefully in his chambers, while he signed documents and heard petitions and lived his comfortable life, his mate had been here. In this room. Suffering at Ravenna's hands. He had allowed this. Enabled this. His wolf's howl became a scream of pure anguish. Kale pressed his forehead against the cold stone wall and struggled to breathe through the crushing weight of his guilt. He had known she was in the dungeon. Had known she was chained. Had known Ravenna held old grudges. He hadn't cared. The poison had clouded his judgment, yes. But it hadn't created the indifference. That had been entirely his own. Serafina. The sanctuary was hidden in the heart of an ancient forest, miles from the palace. Draven led her there as the sun set, guiding her through paths that seemed to shift and change, through shadows that whispered with old magic. When they finally emerged into a moonlit clearing, Serafina felt her breath catch. A woman stood waiting. Not solid, translucent, glowing faintly with silver light. Her features were achingly familiar. The shape of her eyes. The curve of her cheekbones. A face Serafina had seen in dreams for 15 years. Mother. The ghost smiled, and tears of light rolled down her cheeks. My daughter. My beautiful, powerful daughter. Her voice echoed strangely, as if coming from very far away. I've waited so long to speak with you. How? Serafina stepped forward, hand outstretched. Her fingers passed through her mother's form like water through air. How are you here? Unfinished business binds spirits to the mortal plane. I couldn't rest knowing what they planned for you. Knowing you would face Ravenna alone. Her mother's ghost drifted closer. But you're not alone anymore. And I can finally teach you what you need to know. For hours, as the moon tracked across the sky, Serafina's mother taught her. Combat forms that flowed like water and struck like lightning. Ways to channel the golden luna's power without burning herself out. Ancient techniques for shielding her mind against dark magic. And warnings. Always warnings. The ritual requires your blood spilled willingly, her mother said as dawn approached. Do you understand what that means? If I give my blood freely, Nyx can possess me. It's more than that. Her mother's ghost flickered, her form growing fainter with the rising sun. Ravenna will threaten you. Torture you. Kill innocent people in front of you. She'll do anything to break you. But no matter what she does, no matter who she kills, you cannot offer your blood freely. If you do, all is lost. Even if she kills the hostages? All 300 of them? Her mother's face crumpled with ghostly grief. Even then. I know it's monstrous. I know it goes against everything you are. But if Nyx returns wearing your face, she won't just kill 300 wolves. She'll kill millions. She'll unmake the world. The sun crested the horizon. Her mother's form began to dissolve. I love you, the ghost whispered. I have always loved you. Fight, my daughter. Fight and win. Then she was gone, and Seraphina stood alone in the clearing, carrying the weight of an impossible choice. She discovered the spy by accident. Returning early from the sanctuary, she passed Alpha Theron's temporary chambers and heard voices. One she recognized, Theron's oily baritone. The other crackled with unnatural static, clearly transmitted through dark magic. The Golden Luna's power is impressive, but she has weaknesses. The bond with the Alpha King causes her visible pain. Focus your efforts there, and she'll crumble. Seraphina pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding. Theron was feeding information to Ravenna. Her first instinct was to burst through the door, to expose him, to make him pay. But Aurora whispered caution, and a plan began to form. If Theron believed the bond was her weakness, Ravenna would believe it too. And if Ravenna focused on hurting Kale to break Seraphina, she wouldn't be focused on the hostages. It was cruel. Using the man who had hurt her as bait, letting Ravenna believe that torturing him would destroy Seraphina's will to fight. Putting him in direct danger when he was already drowning in guilt. But 300 wolves were worth more than Kale's safety. Worth more than her own complicated feelings. Seraphina slipped away from the door and went to find a private place to confide in someone within Theron's earshot. Let Ravenna think she knew Seraphina's weakness. Let her be wrong. Kale. He found her on the battlements as midnight approached. Seraphina stood alone, staring out at the dark forest beyond the palace walls. The wind caught her white gold hair, making it stream behind her like a banner. She looked like a warrior goddess. Like something from legend. She looked exhausted. You should be sleeping, he said quietly. So should you. He moved to stand beside her, careful to maintain distance. I went to the dungeon today. Her shoulders stiffened almost imperceptibly. Why? Because I needed to see it. Needed to understand what I... He couldn't finish the sentence. Ravenna visited you every night. The guards told me. And I found the room where she... I know what she did to me. I don't need you to describe it. No. But I need you to know that I know. He turned to face her, even though she wouldn't meet his eyes. I need to tell you something else. Something I should have admitted when you healed me. I don't want your confessions. Then consider it penance. Consider it information you deserve to have. He took a breath. The reason the poison worked so well on me. The reason I fell so easily into cruelty. It wasn't just Ravenna's magic. Seraphina finally looked at him. Her golden eyes were guarded, waiting. I was glad to reject you. The words tasted like ash. When I first saw you at the mating ceremony, a wolfless servant girl, skinny and scared, my pride revolted. My wolf accepted you, but I didn't want to. I thought the moon goddess had made a mistake. Thought I deserved better. Her expression didn't change. But he felt the bond pulse between them, sharp and painful. The darkness was always inside me, he continued. Ravenna didn't create it. She just gave it permission to come out. She found the crack in my honor, and she poured poison into it, and I let her. Because part of me wanted to believe you were worthless. Silence stretched between them. Why are you telling me this? Seraphina's voice was quiet. Controlled. Because you deserve the truth. Because I won't hide behind the excuse of magic when my own weakness did half the damage. He held her gaze. I am not a good man, Seraphina. I never was. But I'm trying to be better. And if I die fighting Ravenna, I want you to know that I went into it with clear eyes. She stared at him for a long moment. You think this confession earns you something? Forgiveness? Understanding? No. I think it earns me nothing but your contempt. Which is exactly what I deserve. The bond pulsed again. Despite everything, the truth, the cruelty, the admission that his darkness had been his own, the bond still wanted him. Still reached for him. Serafina hated that. He could see it in her eyes. She hated him. Hated herself. Hated the connection that refused to break no matter how much damage it sustained. "Leave me alone," she said finally. He bowed his head and left. 3 days until the blood moon. The messenger arrived at dawn, carrying a wooden box sealed with black wax. Serafina opened it in the great hall, surrounded by the 5 alphas and their warriors. Inside lay a body, broken, bloodied, barely recognizable. Elder Miriam. The only council member who had spoken against Serafina's execution. Carved into her skin, in letters that had been made slowly and carefully, was a message. "For every day you delay, I take someone who chose you over me. You have 72 hours left, little wolf. Come alone. Come willing. Or watch everyone who ever showed you kindness die screaming." Serafina stared at the body of the woman who had tried to save her. Somewhere in the ruins of Nyx, Tommy was still alive. But Ravenna had made her point. She wasn't bluffing. The clock was ticking. And Serafina still didn't have a plan that didn't end with her own erasure. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. The armies will be a distraction. Serafina stood at the head of the war table, 5 alpha kings and their generals arrayed before her. Maps of the ruins of Nyx covered every surface, ancient blueprints, scout reports, tactical assessments. None of it mattered. While Ravenna focuses on the attack, she continued, "I go in alone through the old tunnels. I get the hostages out. And then." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. The silence that fell was heavy as a shroud. Every wolf in the room understood what she wasn't saying. The ritual required her blood, spilled willingly. If she couldn't find another way to stop Ravenna, if it came down to her life or 300 innocents, she would make the only choice she could live with. Even if she wouldn't live at all. There has to be another option. Kale's voice was rough. "We can overwhelm her forces. Break through her defenses before." Before what? Before she kills the hostages one by one? Serafina shook her head. "You saw what she did to Elder Miriam. She's not bluffing. The moment she realizes she's losing, she'll slaughter them all. Then we find another way to." "There is no other way." She met his eyes across the table. "I've accepted that. You need to accept it too." The bond screamed between them. She felt his desperation, his guilt, his helpless rage. She felt her own exhaustion pressing down like physical weight. Tomorrow, one way or another, this would end. "The plan stands," she said. "Armies at dawn. I go through the tunnels. Whatever happens after that, happens." She walked out before anyone could argue further. The night stretched before her like a final gift. Serafina moved through the palace with purpose, visiting everyone who had ever shown her kindness. There weren't many. 5 years as a rejected servant hadn't exactly cultivated deep friendships. But there were some. She found Draven in the armory, sharpening his blade. Mother's journal. She pressed the leather-bound book into his hands. "If I don't come back, make sure the world knows the truth. About her. About father. About what Ravenna really is." Draven's fingers closed around the journal. His jaw tightened. "You're coming back. Maybe. But if I don't," she touched his face, this brother she'd only just discovered. "Thank you. For the vial. For the extra food. For every small kindness you showed me when no one else cared. I survived because of you. Sarah. Don't." She managed a smile. "Let me say goodbye properly. Just in case." She hugged him, quick and fierce, then left before either of them could cry. The clearing in the forest was silver with moonlight. Seraphina stood where her mother's ghost had taught her, calling out with her power. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the air shimmered, and her mother appeared. "You're going tomorrow." Not a question. "Yes. You might not survive." "I know." Her mother's ghost drifted closer. Translucent fingers brushed Seraphina's cheek. She felt nothing but cold air, but the gesture made her throat tighten. "I wish I could protect you," her mother whispered. "I wish I could fight in your place." "You already did. You died trying to stop this." Seraphina took a shaky breath. "I need to release you. Your unfinished business, it was teaching me, wasn't it? Warning me?" "Yes. Then it's finished. You've done everything you could." Tears slipped down Seraphina's cheeks. "You can rest now. You should rest." Her mother's form began to glow brighter, silver light intensifying. "I love you," the ghost said. "In this life and whatever comes after. I will always love you." "I love you too, Mama." The light flared, brilliant, blinding, and then she was gone. The clearing felt emptier than before. Colder. Seraphina stood alone for a long time, letting herself grieve. Then she walked back to the palace. The servants' quarters were quiet this late. Seraphina moved through the narrow hall she'd called home for 5 years, stopping at doors she knew well. The cook who had slipped her extra bread. The elderly maid who had taught her how to make wounds look accidental. The young serving girl who had shared her blanket during cold nights. At each door, she left a pouch of gold. Enough to start a new life. Enough to escape. She didn't knock. Didn't explain. These small kindnesses had been given in secret, and she would repay them the same way. One door remained. Kale's chambers. Seraphina stood in the corridor, staring at the carved wood. The bond pulsed inside her, that damned connection that refused to die no matter how much she wanted it to. She didn't want forgiveness. Didn't want reconciliation. Didn't want anything from the man who had nearly destroyed her. But she was tired of fighting herself. She opened the door. Kale stood by the window, staring out at the darkness. He turned when she entered. His expression shifted through surprise, hope, and a desperate kind of longing before settling into careful neutrality. "Seraphina. I'm not here to forgive you. I know. I'm not here for reconciliation. Or closure. Or any of the things you probably want. I know." She closed the door behind her. "Then why am I here?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because the bond won't let you leave without saying goodbye. And you're tired of fighting something that's part of you." Damn him for understanding. She moved further into the room, this chamber she'd cleaned 100 times, this space where he'd laughed with Ravenna while Seraphina scrubbed his floors. "I'm going to tell you something," she said. "And you're going to listen without defending yourself. Without explaining. Without making excuses." He nodded. "Your cruelty nearly broke me." The words came out steady, but each one cost her. Not just the rejection. Not just watching you with her. The small things. The way you looked through me like I didn't exist. The way you let the other nobles treat me like garbage. The way you signed my death warrant without a moment's hesitation. Kale stood perfectly still. His face was pale, but he didn't speak. "I used to dream about you," she continued. "In the beginning. I thought maybe if I was patient, if I proved myself, you'd see me eventually. You'd feel the bond and realize you'd made a mistake." She laughed bitterly. "I was so pathetic. Scrubbing your floors and hoping you'd love me." "Seraphina. I'm not finished." She held up a hand. "The poison clouded your judgment. I know that. But you admitted yourself, the darkness was already there. The contempt. The pride. Ravenna didn't create them. She just gave them room to grow." He nodded slowly. "Accepting. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, she said. I don't know if I want to. But I'm going into battle tomorrow, and I might not come out. And She swallowed hard. I needed you to know exactly what you cost me. Not so you could apologize. So you could carry it. Forever. The silence stretched between them. Then Cale spoke, his voice rough. If you die tomorrow. Don't. If you die tomorrow, he repeated, I'll spend the rest of my life protecting every wolfless omega in every kingdom. I'll build sanctuaries. Pass laws. Make sure no one ever suffers the way you did because of my blindness. Seraphina stared at him. It's not enough, he said quietly. It's not nearly enough. Nothing I do will ever be enough to make up for what you endured. But it's what I can offer. A legacy of protection instead of cruelty. Change instead of more of the same. It wasn't forgiveness. Wasn't reconciliation. But it was something. Fine, she said. Do that. Make it mean something. She turned to leave. Seraphina. She paused at the door. I know you don't want to hear it. But I need to say it anyway. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. Not because it will change anything. Not because I expect absolution. But because you deserved better than me, and I'm sorry I couldn't be that. I'm sorry I didn't even try. She didn't turn around. Didn't acknowledge the words. But as she walked away, something small and broken inside her shifted. Not healing. Not forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. It would have to be enough. Dawn broke red. The blood moon was rising, staining the sky the color of rust and dried blood. 5 armies marched toward the ruins of Nyx, banners snapping in a cold wind that carried the scent of ancient magic. Seraphina separated from the main force at the forest's edge. Only Draven accompanied her, her brother, her protector, the only person she trusted absolutely. The tunnel entrance was hidden beneath a collapsed temple, overgrown with centuries of vines and debris. Seraphina's power burned through the obstruction, revealing stone stairs descending into darkness. Ready? Draven asked. No. Let's go anyway. They descended. The tunnels were worse than she'd imagined. Ancient stone, carved by hands that had worshipped darkness. Every surface was covered with images that made her stomach turn. Wolves being sacrificed on altars. Blood flowing into channels that led to ritual circles. A goddess rising from crimson pools, her face beautiful and terrible. And repeated again and again, a woman with golden eyes, her body splitting open, darkness pouring out of her like smoke. They've been planning this for centuries, Aurora whispered. Waiting for the right golden luna. The right vessel. Lucky me. They moved through the tunnels in silence, following passages that twisted and turned, always descending deeper. The air grew colder. The carvings grew more disturbing. Finally, they emerged into a vast underground chamber. And there, in cages of black iron, were the hostages. 300 wolves, packed into cells that lined the walls. Men, women, children, all of them silent. All of them still. Too still. Something's wrong, Aurora warned. Seraphina moved toward the cages anyway. Dark creatures lurked in the shadows, twisted things made of shadow and teeth, but they fell before her golden power. Draven fought at her side, his blade flashing in the dim light. They cleared the chamber. The creatures dissolved into smoke. And the hostages didn't react. They stood in their cages, unmoving, their eyes glazed and empty. No cries for help. No signs of recognition. No fear, no relief, no anything. Seraphina approached the nearest cage. Inside, a woman stared through her with blank eyes. Hello? Can you hear me? Nothing. Sarah, Aurora's voice was urgent. Their minds are. Seraphina. She spun at Draven's shout, and saw Tommy. The little boy stood outside his cage, somehow free, walking toward her with a smile on his face. The same gap-toothed smile she remembered from story time. The same brown eyes she'd looked into 100 times. Tommy. Relief flooded through her. Thank the goddess, you're okay. How did you? I've been waiting for you, he said. His hand moved. Something dark flashed in his grip, a blade of pure shadow. Before Seraphina could react, before she could even understand what was happening, the blade plunged into her shoulder. Not her heart. Not her throat. Her shoulder. Exactly where the ritual required blood to be spilled. Thank you for your sacrifice, Tommy said. But the voice wasn't his. It was Ravenna's. Understanding crashed through Seraphina like ice water. The hostages had never been hostages. They'd been vessels, possessed by fragments of Ravenna's consciousness weeks ago. Every interaction Seraphina had had with Tommy, every story she'd read him, every moment of kindness. Ravenna had been watching. Learning. Waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The blade was still in her shoulder. Blood, her blood, golden-tinged and luminous, flowed down her arm. Dripped from her fingers. Landed on the stone floor. The floor that was carved with ritual circles she hadn't noticed. Channels that her blood was now filling, spreading outward in patterns that glowed with dark energy. No. Seraphina tried to move, tried to rip the blade free. No, I didn't give this willingly. But you did. Ravenna's voice echoed from every possessed throat in the chamber. 300 mouths moving in unison. You came here to save them. You walked into my trap of your own free will. You let your guard down because a child smiled at you. The voices laughed. Your blood was always going to be spilled in this place. I just needed you to bring it here yourself. The ritual circle blazed to life. Dark energy erupted from the floor, surging up through Seraphina's body. She screamed as it invaded her veins, her bones, her soul. She could feel something ancient and terrible stirring inside her, a consciousness so vast it made Aurora seem like a candle flame beside a bonfire. Nix. Fight, Aurora roared, throwing golden light against the darkness. Don't let her in. Seraphina fought. With everything she had, she fought. But the darkness was everywhere, in her blood, in her mind, in the very air she breathed. And Nyx was so strong. So old. So hungry. At last, a voice whispered inside her head. Not Ravenna. Something far worse. At last, a body worthy of my return. Above ground, Kale felt the bond twist and scream. He was in the middle of battle, dark creatures pressing from all sides, when the pain hit. Not physical pain, something deeper. Something that felt like Seraphina being torn apart from the inside. Sarah. He abandoned the fight. Abandoned his soldiers. Abandoned everything. He ran toward the ruins, shifting mid-stride, his wolf's legs carrying him faster than any human could move. Through the battle. Through the dark creatures. Through the ancient entrance and down into the tunnels. He could feel her through the bond, dimming. Fragmenting. Becoming something else. Please, he begged whoever might be listening. Please don't let me be too late. But deep down, he already knew. The blood moon had reached its peak. And Seraphina was losing herself. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 6. The world had shattered into two halves. Seraphina stood in a landscape that shouldn't exist, her own mind, fractured and bleeding. To her left, golden light stretched toward an endless horizon, warm and familiar. To her right, consuming darkness swallowed everything, cold and ancient and hungry. And standing at the border between them, wearing Seraphina's face like a stolen mask, was Nyx. The goddess was beautiful in the terrible way of hurricanes and wildfires. Her features were Seraphina's own, the same cheekbones, the same lips, the same cascade of white gold hair. But her eyes were wrong. Endless black voids that drank light and gave nothing back. You can't win, little descendant. Nyx's voice resonated with centuries of power. This body was always meant to be mine. Your grandmother was just keeping it warm. Aurora materialized beside Seraphina, her golden wolf form bristling with desperate fury. Don't listen to her. We can fight this. Can you? Nyx smiled with Seraphina's mouth. Your wolf is barely a century old. I am older than the mountains. Older than the moon itself. You are a candle trying to hold back the ocean. The darkness surged forward, crashing against Seraphina's consciousness like a wave against sand. She staggered, feeling pieces of herself eroding with each assault. Memories slipping away. Thoughts fragmenting. Hold on, Aurora growled, throwing golden light against the tide. Hold on to who you are. But who was she? A rejected mate? A condemned prisoner? A servant who scrubbed floors while her tormentors laughed? The darkness pressed harder, and Seraphina began to drown. Kale. The tunnel was a gauntlet of nightmares. Kale fought through dark creatures that reformed as fast as he destroyed them. Through passages that twisted and changed, trying to lead him astray. Through shadows that whispered his failures, his cruelties, every moment he'd looked at his mate with contempt. The bond was his compass. Even corrupted by Nyx's energy, even twisted and screaming with wrongness, he could feel Seraphina. Dimming. Fragmenting. Becoming something else. Faster, his wolf demanded. Move faster. He rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. Ravenna stood blocking the passage ahead, her ancient face twisted with triumph. Dark energy crackled around her hands, her black eyes gleaming with reflected power. She's already gone, Ravenna purred. Your precious mate is just a shell now. Nyx is rising, and there's nothing you can do to. Kale shifted. His wolf exploded from his human form with a roar of pure rage. 5 years of guilt. 5 years of cruelty he couldn't take back. 5 years of poison and manipulation and helpless blindness. He channeled it all into his attack. Ravenna's eyes widened. She threw up a shield of dark magic, but Kale crashed through it like paper. His jaws closed around her arm, the arm that had held the blade that tortured his mate, and he twisted. Bone shattered. Ravenna screamed. She tried to portal away, tried to summon more creatures, tried to fight. But Kale was beyond strategy, beyond tactics, beyond anything resembling restraint. He was pure alpha fury, and he had 5 years of sins to pay for. His claws tore through her defenses. His fangs found her throat. And when it was over, when Ravenna lay broken and bleeding at his feet, he shifted back to human form and kept running. The chamber was close. He could feel Seraphina slipping away. Hold on, he begged through the bond. Please hold on. Seraphina. Give in. Nyx's voice was everywhere now, above, below, inside. The darkness had nearly consumed the golden half of the mindscape. Seraphina knelt at the shrinking border, Aurora's weakening form pressed against her side. Give in, and I can end your suffering. The goddess drifted closer, her black eyes almost kind. I can give you everything you ever wanted. The darkness parted, and Seraphina saw her parents. Alive. Smiling. Reaching for her with open arms. A cottage in a sunlit meadow. Peace. Safety. Home. Kale, looking at her with love instead of contempt. Taking her hand on their mating night. Choosing her. I can make it real. Nyx's voice was seductive, gentle. I can rewrite time itself. Unmake your suffering. Give you the life you deserved. Seraphina reached toward the vision. Her mother's face. Her father's laugh. A life without pain. Don't. Aurora's voice was a whisper, barely audible over the darkness's roar. It's a lie. She'll erase you and wear your face. Everything you are will be gone. But everything I am is pain. Serafina's voice cracked. I'm tired. I'm so tired of fighting. I know. Aurora pressed closer. But pain made us who we are. Without it, you wouldn't have survived the poisoning. You wouldn't have woken me. You wouldn't have the strength to fight her now. I don't have strength. I have nothing. You have rage. The word cut through Serafina's despair like a blade. The goddess expects you to fight with light, Aurora continued. With love and hope and all the things you're supposed to feel. But that's not who we are. We're not a creature of pure light, Serafina. We're a creature of survival. And we survived through hate. Serafina stared at her wolf. The reason the vial worked. The reason I finally woke after 24 years of suppression. It wasn't just the antidote. It was you. Your rage. Your crystallized, purified hate for everyone who wronged you. Aurora's golden eyes blazed. The goddess cannot consume what is poisoned. And you, my dear human, are poisoned to your core. Nyx felt the shift before she understood it. What are you? Serafina stopped reaching for the false vision. Stopped fighting like a warrior. Stopped trying to push the darkness back with light. Instead, she opened. She let Nyx in, not to surrender, but to share. Every memory. Every wound. Every scar that had been carved into her soul over 24 years of suffering. The moment her parents died. The screams. The silence. 9 years old, hiding in a root cellar, clutching her mother's shawl. The servant quarters. The hunger. The cold. Kale's face when he first saw her. The disgust. The contempt. This cannot be right. My mate cannot be this. The rejection. The humiliation. The nights she cried herself to sleep while he laughed with another woman in the next room. Ravenna's visits to the dungeon. The instruments of torture. The stop. Nyx recoiled, her perfect face contorting with something like horror. The darkness retreated, pulling back from Serafina's consciousness. But Serafina followed. You want this body? She advanced on the goddess, no longer golden and bright but something rawer. Something darker. Then take what comes with it. She threw more memories. The worst ones. The ones she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten them. Being spat on by nobles. Being kicked awake for morning chores. Being told she was worthless, defective, a mistake. Hoping for kindness and receiving none. Loving someone who saw her as garbage. 5 years of hell. Stop. Nyx was screaming now, her form flickering, her black eyes wild with something that looked almost like pain. This isn't, I didn't, you were supposed to be pure. I was never pure. Serafina's voice came out layered, her own and Aurora's, merged together. I was forged in suffering. Tempered in hate. And if you want to possess me, you have to consume everything I am. She opened completely. No barriers. No defenses. Just raw, unfiltered Serafina, every beautiful and ugly piece of her laid bare. Nyx tried to retreat. Serafina didn't let her. The goddess screamed as she was pulled into Serafina's soul. Not destroyed, absorbed. The darkness that had been trying to consume her was suddenly being consumed itself. Nyx fought, but Serafina's trauma was a labyrinth with no exit. Every wound the goddess touched became a trap. Every scar became a chain. You wanted my body, Serafina thought savagely. Now you're stuck with my baggage. The mindscape convulsed. Light and darkness crashed together, merging, refusing to separate. Serafina felt Nyx's consciousness colliding with her own, not possession, not consumption, but fusion. Two becoming one. What are you doing? Aurora's voice was alarmed. Sarah, what's happening? I don't know. Serafina watched as the fractured landscape began to reform, no longer half light and half dark, but something in between. twilight. Shadow and shine intertwined. I can't stop it. Nyx's voice echoed through her mind, no longer attacking but merging. You should have let me win. Now neither of us can escape. The fusion completed. And Seraphina opened her eyes. Kale. He burst into the ritual chamber just as everything changed. Seraphina hung suspended in the center of the room, surrounded by a maelstrom of light and shadow. The ritual circle blazed beneath her, ancient symbols pulsing with power that made his wolf cower. Around her, the possessed hostages had collapsed. The dark presence that had controlled them was gone, pulled back, Kale realized, into its source. Into Seraphina. He watched in horror as her body convulsed. As golden light and black shadow fought across her skin, neither winning, neither losing. As her hair flickered between white gold and midnight black. Then, stillness. Seraphina drifted down to the stone floor, landing with impossible grace. Her head was bowed, her hair curtaining her face. Seraphina? Behind him, something laughed. Kale spun. Ravenna lay where he'd left her, broken and bleeding, but still conscious. Still alive. You think you've won? She coughed blood, but her ancient face was twisted with dark amusement. Look at her eyes, Alpha King. Look at what she's become. Seraphina raised her head. Kale's heart stopped. Her left eye was gold, molten, brilliant, the color of the sun. Her right eye was black, endless, lightless, the color of the void between stars. Golden runes still marked her skin, but dark veins now pulsed beneath them, shadow and light weaving together in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Her hair had settled into something between, white at the roots, darkening to black at the tips. And at her feet, shadows curled like living things. While above her head, a crown of light flickered and burned. The golden Luna is dead, Ravenna rasped. Something much worse has taken her place. Seraphina? Kale stepped toward her, one hand outstretched. Can you hear me? Are you? She tilted her head, studying him with those mismatched eyes. The movement was wrong, too fluid, too predatory. Like a creature deciding whether to eat something or let it live. What am I now? The voice wasn't right either. It was Seraphina's voice, but layered. Doubled. Her own words echoing with something ancient and inhuman. What do you mean? Kale's own voice shook. She looked down at her hands. Light danced across one palm. Shadows curled across the other. When she clenched her fists, both obeyed her will. I tried to push her out. The dual voice was wondering now. Almost confused. But I couldn't. So I pulled her in instead. Made her part of me. She looked at Kale again. I'm not possessed. I'm not consumed. She trailed off, searching for words that didn't exist. You're still you, Kale said desperately. You have to be. The bond, I can still feel you through the bond. Can you? She took a step toward him, and he had to fight not to retreat. What do you feel? He reached for the bond. It was still there, altered, strange, but present. He pushed through the changes and searched for his mate. What he found was Seraphina. But more. Deeper. Darker. Older. And angry. Seraphina, both voices said. That name no longer fits. She took another step. Shadows trailed behind her like a cape. Light flickered in her white gold to black hair. But we remember you, mate. The dual tones hardened. We remember everything you did to us. Every cruel word. Every cold look. Every night we cried while you laughed with her. I know. Kale held his ground, even as his wolf screamed at him to run. I know what I did. I'm not here to make excuses. Then why are you here? Because you're my mate. Whatever you've become, you're still mine. And I'm not leaving you. The creature wearing Seraphina's face stared at him with those impossible eyes. Something flickered in the gold one. Something almost human. But the black one remained cold. Calculating. Ancient. "We'll see," both voices said. "We'll see what you do when you understand exactly what you're dealing with." She walked past him, toward the tunnel exit. The possessed hostages were stirring now, their borrowed consciousness gone, their true selves returning. Kale watched her go. Behind him, Ravenna laughed one final time before falling silent. And Kale followed his mate, his strange, hybrid, terrifying mate, out of the ruins. Whatever she had become, he meant what he said. He wasn't leaving her. Even if she destroyed him for it. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 7. 3 days. 3 days since the ritual. 3 days since the being that had been Seraphina walked out of the ruins of Nyx with mismatched eyes and a voice that echoed with ancient power. 3 days, and the 5 kingdoms cowered. She sat on the Silvercrest throne now, not beside it, not near it, but on it. The seat that had belonged to Alpha Kings for 1,000 years. Her white to black hair cascaded over armrests carved with wolf imagery. Shadows pooled at her feet. Light crowned her head. She hadn't spoken much. Hadn't explained what she'd become. Hadn't reassured anyone that the woman they'd known still existed inside this strange new creature. She'd given only one command. "Bring me everyone who watched my execution and did nothing." The great hall was packed. Nobles, warriors, servants, commoners, anyone who had been in the central square that morning when Seraphina was dragged to the block. They stood in terrified clusters, watching the throne where the hybrid sat in perfect stillness. Kale stood to the side, close enough to intervene, far enough to show he held no power here. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes never left Seraphina. Whatever she had become, she was still his mate. He could feel her through the bond, changed, darker, but present. He wouldn't abandon her. Even if she destroyed him for staying. "Lord Harwick." The dual voice cut through the silence. Lord Harwick, the council member who had sputtered protests when Seraphina entered the king's chambers, went pale as milk. "Approach." He approached. His legs shook so badly he nearly fell twice. When he reached the base of the throne, he collapsed to his knees without being commanded. "You voted for my execution." "Not a question." "You called for the blade to fall." "You cheered when they dragged me to the block." I was following the evidence, the wolfsbane. Was planted." "You knew it was planted." "Everyone knew." The hybrid leaned forward. "Did you investigate? Did you question? Did you raise even one voice in my defense?" Silence. "No. You saw a wolfless servant condemned by your king's mistress, and you decided I wasn't worth the trouble of doubt." She raised one hand, the one wrapped in shadow. "You are guilty of complicity in attempted murder. The sentence is death." Darkness lashed out. Lord Harwick didn't even have time to scream. The shadows wrapped around him, squeezed, and when they retreated, only dust remained. The hall erupted in terrified whispers. "Lady Moorhaven. Approach." And so it continued. One by one, she called them forward. One by one, she judged them. Some were executed, the ones who had actively participated in her torment, who had spit on her as she was dragged past, who had placed bets on how quickly she would die. Some were marked, golden brands seared into their foreheads that would never fade, never heal, marking them forever as wolves who had chosen cruelty when kindness cost nothing. And some, the ones who had merely watched, merely been afraid, merely followed the crowd, were released. Be better, the hybrid told them, or be fuel. They fled. Kale watched it all. This wasn't justice. It was vengeance wearing justice's mask, punishment dealt by a being who had suffered too much to remember mercy. But he couldn't stop her. Couldn't reach the woman inside the goddess. So he stayed. And he watched. And he waited for an opening that might never come. Draven found her alone that night. The hybrid stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, staring out at a kingdom that had once tortured her. Shadows danced at her feet. Starlight caught in her mismatched eyes. This isn't you. She didn't turn. Draven. Seraphina would never execute people without trial. Would never brand them like cattle. Would never. Seraphina spent 5 years being nothing. Both voices were cold. Flat. She scrubbed floors and took beatings and hoped someone would show her kindness. She was weak. We are not. That's not weakness. Draven moved closer, his heart pounding. That's survival. That's strength most people never have to find. And where did it get her? The execution block. A blade at her throat. The entire kingdom cheering for her death. The hybrid finally turned. Those mismatched eyes, gold and black, fixed on him with terrible intensity. We will not be that vulnerable again. We will not give them the chance to hurt us. So you'll hurt them first? Become the monster they always said you were? We are not a monster. We are justice. Your vengeance. Draven's voice cracked. There's a difference. The hybrid stared at him. For a moment, something flickered in the gold eye, pain, exhaustion, something almost human. Then it was gone. Leave us. Draven didn't move. If Nyx had complete control, if Seraphina was really gone, you would have killed everyone. The children. The innocents. The hostages you supposedly came to save. He stepped closer. But you didn't. You stopped at the guilty. You spared those who were merely afraid. The hybrid's jaw tightened. That's not Nyx. That's not a dark goddess seeking revenge. Draven's eyes burned with desperate hope. That's my sister. Still fighting. Still in there. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then the gold eye flickered again. Brighter this time. More present. She's. The dual voice wavered. She's tired. She's so tired of fighting. Let her rest. I can't. Draven reached out, placing his hand over his heart. I won't. I just found her. I won't lose her now. The hybrid turned away. But Draven had seen it. The crack in the merged consciousness. The woman still trapped inside. He would find a way to reach her. He had to. Tommy woke on the 4th day. The little boy sat up in the infirmary bed, confused and frightened. He had no memory of the possession, no memory of plunging a dark blade into Seraphina's shoulder, of speaking with Ravenna's voice, of being used as a weapon against the woman who read him stories. He only knew he'd had bad dreams. The healers tried to keep him in bed. Tried to explain that he should stay away from the throne room, stay away from the creature that sat on the Silvercrest throne. Tommy didn't listen. He wandered through the palace corridors in his sleeping clothes, small feet padding against cold stone. Guards tried to stop him. He slipped past. Servants tried to redirect him. He ignored them. He found her in the great hall, sitting alone on the throne, shadows pooling around her like dark water. Story lady? The hybrid's head snapped toward him. Both eyes, gold and black, fixed on the child with sudden, terrifying intensity. Tommy didn't flinch. Will you read to me again? His voice was small but steady. I had bad dreams. You always make the bad dreams go away. Something happened. Inside the merged consciousness, in the twilight landscape where Seraphina had retreated to rest, she stirred. For the first time in days, she pushed toward the surface. Tommy. This was why she'd gone to the ritual. This child. This innocent. Not for vengeance. Not for power. For a little boy who liked stories about brave knights and magical wolves. The hybrid's black eye flickered. Nyx's presence recoiled from the pure, uncomplicated love radiating from the child. The gold eye brightened. I. The dual voice wavered, splitting. We. Tommy climbed up onto the throne dais and sat down beside her. Without fear. Without hesitation. He leaned against her arm like he had 100 times in the servants' quarters. The one about the wolf who found her family, he said. That's my favorite. Inside the merged consciousness, Seraphina fought. Clawed her way toward the surface. Toward the child who needed her. The gold eye burned brighter. For just a moment, one voice spoke alone. I remember that one, Seraphina said. Kale. He made his decision during the night. Watching Seraphina retreat after Tommy's appearance. Watching her hybrid form flicker between mercy and vengeance. Watching her struggle against the goddess inside her with no one to help. He couldn't reach her. Couldn't break through the merged consciousness. Couldn't give her anything she would accept. Except one thing. The next morning, he entered the great hall and walked straight to the throne where the hybrid sat in cold judgment. The court fell silent. Warriors tensed. Nobles held their breath. Kale knelt. Not the forced submission her power demanded. Not the reluctant obedience of a defeated enemy. He knelt voluntarily, deliberately, and bowed his head. I, Kale Vance, Alpha King of Silvercrest, formally accept blame for every wrong done to Seraphina Ashford during my reign. Whispers erupted. The hybrid went still. I rejected my true mate on the night of our bonding because I was too proud to accept a wolfless Luna. His voice carried through the hall, steady and clear. I allowed her to be abused by my household. I ignored the mate bond's warnings. I signed her death warrant without investigation. The whispers became gasps. I enabled a witch to torture her in my own dungeons while I slept peacefully above. Kale's voice cracked, but he kept going. I failed in every duty a mate owes. I failed in every responsibility a king bears. I am guilty of cruelty, neglect, and willful blindness. He raised his head, meeting those mismatched eyes directly. I renounce my right to be her mate. I release her from any claim I might have made. And I offer my life, not to her, but to the pack, as payment for my failures as king. He bent his neck. Bared his throat. The most vulnerable position an alpha could take. If my death will bring her back, if my blood can balance the scales, then take it. His voice dropped to a whisper. But don't let her become what we made her. Don't let our cruelty create another monster. Silence crashed through the hall. The hybrid stared at him. Gold Eye and Black Eye, both fixed on the Alpha King kneeling at her feet with his throat exposed. Inside the merged consciousness, something cracked. He's offering to die. Seraphina floated in the twilight landscape, watching through eyes that were no longer entirely hers. Kale knelt before the throne, neck bared, waiting for death. He thinks his blood will bring you back, Nyx's voice echoed through the mindscape. He thinks sacrifice will heal what we've become. Will it? No. We are fused now. No death will separate us. Seraphina drifted closer to the surface, closer to the merged consciousness that controlled their shared body. She could feel Nyx there, ancient, powerful, full of rage. But beneath the rage, she felt something else. Pain. Centuries of pain. You weren't always like this, Seraphina realized. Were you? Silence. The wolves who sealed you away. The descendants whose blood was used to imprison you. You didn't start as a dark goddess. I started as a mother. Nyx's voice was bitter. A protector. I gave the first wolves their power. I blessed them with strength and speed and connection to the moon. And they repaid me by hunting my priestesses. Burning my temples. Sealing me in darkness for 1,000 years. They made you into this. They made me into a weapon. A threat. A monster to frighten children. The goddess's presence flickered with something almost like grief. I was never allowed to be anything else. Serafina understood. More than she wanted to. We're the same, she realized. Both of us. Victims made into villains. Survivors twisted by suffering. Yes. I spent 3 days punishing everyone who hurt me. Executing. Branding. Terrorizing. Serafina felt sick. I was becoming exactly what they always said I was. Vengeance felt good, Nyx admitted. For a moment. Only for a moment. Below them, through the eyes they shared, Kale still knelt. Still waited. Still offered his life for a woman he'd spent 5 years destroying. He hurt us, Nyx said. He deserves to die. Maybe. But killing him won't heal us. It'll just make us more of what they made us. Then what do you suggest? Serafina made a choice. Partnership. Real partnership. You're tired of being a weapon. I'm tired of being a victim. What if we stopped fighting each other and started building something new? Nyx was silent for a long moment. You would share your body willingly? After everything I tried to do? You were trying to survive. So was I. Serafina extended her hand in the mindscape, golden light reaching toward consuming darkness. No more fighting. No more dominance. We carry each other. Together. Slowly, hesitantly, Nyx's shadow hand reached back. They touched. And the merged consciousness stabilized. The executioner's blade was an inch from Kale's neck when it stopped. Shadow and light wrapped around the weapon, holding it motionless in the air. The executioner stumbled backward. The court held its breath. Serafina rose from the throne. When she spoke, it was one voice. Her own voice, changed, deeper, resonant with power, but singular. Human. Nyx and I have reached an understanding. She descended the steps, shadows trailing behind her, light flickering at her fingertips. Her eyes were still mismatched, gold and black, but they moved together now. Focused together. She will rest within me, and I will carry her power. But we are done with vengeance. She stopped before Kale, looking down at him with something that wasn't quite forgiveness but wasn't hatred either. Both of us. Serafina, Kale's voice broke. Get up. He didn't move. I said get up. She reached down, grabbed his arm, and hauled him to his feet with strength that shouldn't have been possible. Your debt isn't paid with death. Death is easy. Death is escape. She released him and stepped back. Your debt is paid with life. A lifetime of making amends. A lifetime of protecting the wolves you failed. A lifetime of building the sanctuaries you promised, passing the laws you vowed, creating change instead of maintaining cruelty. Kale stared at her. You're still you. I'm more than I was. And less. She turned to face the court, the 5 alpha kings, the nobles, the warriors, the servants. All of them watching with fear and wonder. The old ways end now. Her voice carried through the hall, resonant with power that came from 2 sources merged into one. I am neither your golden Luna nor your dark goddess. I am something new. Something this world has never seen. She raised both hands, one wreathed in shadow, one crowned in light. And I will remake this world. The ranking system that called me worthless ends. The laws that allowed my abuse end. The cruelty that made monsters of victims ends. She lowered her hands and met the eyes of every alpha king in turn. You can help me build something better. Or you can become ashes beneath something better. Her mismatched eyes blazed. Choose. One by one, the alphas knelt. Not from supernatural compulsion. Not from fear of her power. From recognition of something they hadn't seen in 1,000 years of wolf rule. A leader worth following. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 8. 1 month. 30 days since the blood moon. 30 days since Seraphina had walked out of the ruins of Nyx as something the world had never seen. 30 days of rebuilding, restructuring, remaking everything the five kingdoms had known for 1,000 years. She stood in the Silvercrest throne room now, not as prisoner, not as servant, not as rejected mate, but as queen. The Twilight Queen, they called her. The hybrid who wielded shadow and light. The woman who had been broken and remade into something unbreakable. The crown on her head was new, forged specifically for her, silver and gold twisted together, set with one white diamond and one black pearl. It felt heavier than she'd expected. Everything did. 5 kingdoms had bent the knee. The alphas who had knelt in the Great Hall after her transformation had returned home and declared their allegiance. Those who resisted had been persuaded. Not through violence. Not anymore. But the threat of what she could do lingered in every shadow she cast. The world had changed. But some wounds didn't heal with crowns. The new laws had been carved into stone and distributed throughout the realm. The ranking system is abolished. No wolf shall be deemed lesser for the nature of their birth. Wolfless wolves hold equal rights and protections under the crown. Omegas may not be forced into unwanted bonds. Consent is required for all matings. Any alpha who abuses their power shall face the Queen's justice. Seraphina had written them herself, late at night, with Aurora and Nyx whispering suggestions in the back of her mind. Each word was a blade cutting through 1,000 years of tradition. Each law was a shield for every wolf who had ever suffered as she had. It wasn't enough. Would never be enough. But it was a beginning. The 5 kingdoms were being unified under one rule, hers. Not through conquest, but through necessity. The alphas had seen what she could do. They'd felt her power pressing against their wolves, demanding submission. They'd watched her execute the guilty and spare the innocent. They knew resistance was futile. And some of them, the ones who had never liked the old ways, seemed almost relieved to have an excuse to change. Kale remained at her side. Not as her mate, she hadn't accepted the bond, but as an advisor. A resource. A constant, hovering presence that she couldn't quite bring herself to dismiss. When you've earned it, she'd told him when he asked about the future of their bond. If you ever do. He hadn't argued. Hadn't pushed. Hadn't done anything but work tirelessly to implement her reforms, to build the sanctuaries he'd promised, to become the man he should have been 5 years ago. Some nights, she felt him through the bond. Sitting outside her chambers. Waiting. Hoping. She never let him in. Ravenna's trial was held on a gray morning, 1 month to the day after the blood moon. The ancient witch had survived, barely. Kale's attack had left her broken, and without her magic, without her connection to Nyx, she was just an old woman with dark veins crawling beneath papery skin. They'd kept her in silver chains. Not that she could escape. Not that she had anywhere to go. The central square was packed. The same square where Seraphina had knelt awaiting execution. The same platform where the blade had shattered against her neck. Poetic, perhaps. Or just practical. Ravenna stood where Seraphina once stood, ancient face twisted with resignation. She expected death. Welcomed it, maybe. After centuries of scheming and manipulation, she had nothing left. Seraphina climbed the platform steps and stood before her. She destroyed our mother, Aurora growled. Poisoned us before we were born. Made us suffer for 24 years. She served me, Nyx added, but she also used me. Made me into a weapon when I only wanted rest. Seraphina looked at the broken witch. Saw the dark veins, the hollow eyes, the body that had lived too long and done too much. She saw a monster. But she also saw something else. A woman who had been turned into a weapon. A tool for a goddess who had herself been a victim. A creature shaped by darkness because darkness was all she'd ever known. Not so different, really, from Seraphina herself. You don't have to die, Seraphina said. The crowd murmured in shock. Ravenna's ancient eyes narrowed with suspicion. You think this is mercy? The witch's voice cracked. After everything I did to you? To your mother? To. Nyx doesn't want your blood. Seraphina cut her off. She wants your service. Ravenna went still. There will be a temple, Seraphina continued. The Twilight Temple, dedicated to healing the rift between light and dark. It needs a high priestess. Someone who understands both sides. Someone who has centuries of knowledge to offer. You want me to? Ravenna's voice faltered. To serve you? I want you to have purpose. Spend your immortal life healing the wounds you caused. Teaching others what you know, the good parts, not the dark rituals. Become something other than a monster. The witch stared at her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Why? Ravenna finally whispered. Why would you offer me this? Because death is easy. And I'm not interested in easy anymore. Seraphina held out her hand, the one wreathed in shadow. Choose. The crowd held its breath. Ravenna looked at the offered hand. Looked at the queen who had every right to execute her. Looked at a future she had never imagined. She knelt. I choose life, she said. I choose service. Seraphina felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, that would never come. But closure, perhaps. The end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Then rise, High Priestess. You have work to do. The graves were simple. 2 stone markers in a quiet corner of the forest, far from the palace, far from the kingdoms. This was where they'd buried her parents, in secret, in shame, marked as traitors even in death. Seraphina had the markers replaced. New stones, carved with their true names and their true legacy. Here lie the parents of the Twilight Queen. They died protecting the innocent. They are remembered with love. She knelt in the soft earth between them, her mother's journal clutched to her chest. I wish you could see me now, she whispered. Everything you tried to protect me from, I faced it. Everything you feared would happen, it did. But I survived. I'm still here. They can see you, Aurora said gently. They always could. For a moment, just a breath, just a heartbeat, Seraphina felt 2 ghostly hands on her shoulders. Warm. Proud. Full of a love that death couldn't diminish. Thank you, she said to the empty air. For everything. Draven found her there an hour later. He didn't speak, just sat beside her in the grass and let her lean against his shoulder. I'm officially naming you Beta tomorrow, she said eventually. It was father's position. It should stay in the family. Draven's breath caught. Are you sure? People might think. I don't care what people think. You're my brother. You've protected me since the day I arrived at the palace. You deserve this. He was quiet for a long moment. Then his arm wrapped around her shoulders. I'm proud of you, he said. They would be too. Seraphina closed her eyes and let herself be held. For once, she didn't feel alone. The council summoned her 3 weeks later. 5 Alpha Kings and their advisors, seated around the great table in the war room. Their faces were carefully neutral, but Seraphina could smell their anxiety. Their curiosity. Their hope, in some cases. The kingdoms require stability, Alpha Ronan began. The Northern Alpha was ancient and weathered, but he'd been one of the first to embrace reform. Stability requires succession. We must know, will the Twilight Queen take a mate? Will there be heirs? Seraphina stood at the head of the table, her mismatched eyes moving from face to face. I will take a mate when and if I choose, she said. Not because tradition demands it. Not because you require it. Because I want to. Some of the alphas shifted uncomfortably. Any children I bear will be raised to serve the people, not rule them. Leadership will be earned, not inherited. The next Twilight Queen, or King, will be chosen based on merit, not bloodline. More shifting. The idea of chosen successors rather than born ones was revolutionary. Terrifying to some. And if any alpha thinks he can challenge me or force a claim. She let her eyes flash. Gold and black, light and shadow, power that made even the oldest alphas drop their gazes. I invite them to try. No one moved. In the corner of the room, Kale watched. Hope and heartbreak warred on his face. The bond between them pulsed, present, unaccepted, waiting. Seraphina didn't look at him. But she felt him. As she always did. As she suspected she always would. The letter arrived during the coronation feast. A servant brought it on a silver tray, sealed with black wax, marked with symbols Seraphina didn't recognize. She took it to her chambers before opening it. The paper was dark as midnight. The words were written in blood. Congratulations on your ascension, Sister Vessel. The hunt begins. The Eastern Coven. Seraphina stared at the message, something cold settling in her chest. I felt something during the coronation, she thought to Nyx. Something wrong. Watching. Yes. The goddess's voice was no longer hostile, but it was weary. Ancient, tired in a way that went beyond sleep. There are others. More covens. More rituals. More vessels like us. How many? Ravenna was merely the western branch. There are 4 more. East. South. North. Center. Nyx's presence stirred uneasily. They've been watching. They know what we are now. What we can do. And they want to stop us. They want to use us. Or destroy us. Probably both. Seraphina looked at the blood-written words again. Sister Vessel. Whatever that meant, it couldn't be good. She burned the letter with a thought, golden fire consuming the dark paper, and walked to her balcony. The night sky stretched before her, filled with stars and possibility. The 5 kingdoms spread out below, torches flickering in the darkness, wolves going about their evening business unaware of the new threat lurking beyond their borders. She was no longer the girl who knelt on the execution block. No longer the victim, the Omega, the rejected mate. She was something new. Something powerful. Something dangerous. And apparently, something hunted. A knock sounded at her door. Seraphina knew who it was before she opened it. The bond told her, that constant, unaccepted connection that refused to fade no matter how much distance she put between them. Kale stood in the doorway. Not demanding. Not expecting. Just present. I heard there might be new enemies, he said quietly. I thought you might want company while you planned their destruction. Seraphina considered him. A month of watching him work tirelessly to implement her reforms. A month of seeing him build sanctuaries for wolfless wolves, fight for Omega rights in council meetings, become the alpha he should have been all along. A month of feeling his presence outside her door, patient and waiting, never pushing for more than she was willing to give. He had hurt her. Destroyed her. Nearly killed her. But he was also trying. Genuinely, desperately trying to become someone worthy of the bond fate had given them. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But maybe, someday, it could be. 1 hour, she said. We plan. Then you leave. She stepped aside. Kale entered, careful, grateful, painfully aware of the gift he was being given. They moved to her desk, where maps of the 5 kingdoms spread out alongside intelligence reports from the borders. For more covens, she said, spreading out what little information she had. East, south, north, and something called the center. Ravenna was just one branch of something much larger. Do we know what they want? Power. Control. The same things everyone wants. She pointed to the eastern border. This is where the letter came from. We start there. They bent over the maps together. Their shoulders almost touched. Almost. Inside her mind, Aurora and Nyx settled into comfortable silence. Two wolves in one body. Light and dark. Past and future. This is only the beginning, Seraphina thought. Months of work ahead. Years, maybe. For more covens to destroy. A world to rebuild. A mate to figure out. But for the first time in 5 years, for the first time since Kale had looked at her with disgust on their mating night, Seraphina smiled. Not a queen's diplomatic smile. Not a predator's satisfied smirk. A real smile. Tired and hopeful and finally at peace. The girl who had scrubbed floors was gone. The woman who wore crowns had taken her place. And the Twilight Queen had work to do. I know you enjoyed this video. Do well to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below and share this video to family and friends. The end.